Hello and welcome to this Sky Sports Cricket Vodcast. It's a bit of an Ashes debrief, a horrendous time the team have had throughout their trip in Australia, and it ended abject misery and defeat in Hobart in that final test match under the floodlights. As ever, I'm joined by Rob Key, Michael Atherton, who's in Hobart. Firstly, I'm going to come to Nasser Hussain. Nasser is a former England captain and a lover of test match cricket and everything England. What did you make of it as you watched those final wickets fall and in the manner that they fell?
Groundhog Day, really, Wardy. We've seen it for so long now with England and test match batting and red ball batting. It's the hope that kills you. And when they get to 60 odd for none, you think maybe this time, maybe with a long batting lineup, maybe they can end the tour on a high, but you lose one. And that familiar collapse that we have seen year after year, different personnel, same result. The moment you lose one, they collapse in a heap. And in the end there, batters backing away in an Ashes series when you're 3-0 down, just about to go 4-0 down. It was thoroughly depressing. Not so much because it's another Ashes loss. We've all lost Ashes series, and the stats now in recent tours is a very one-sided series. But the manner of the defeat and the opportunities they had. They played on 3 English-type pitches in Brisbane, Melbourne and Hobart. Sydney did a bit. It wasn't your typical Ashes series, and it's a good Australian side with a great Australian bowling lineup. I think there's vulnerabilities with the bat. So disappointment actually that it could have been different this time, but actually in the end, it ended up as bad, if not worse, than every other Ashes series recently.
We'll investigate where it could have been different and what might need to happen, both structurally, personnel, as we go through this podcast. But Rob, what were you thinking as you were watching those wickets fall and the manner they fell? I mean, the opening partnership gave us all a little bit of hope with Burns and Zach Crawley. And then as ever, as we've seen on this tour, and we've seen it with England batting for a while now, there's a collapse around the corner.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that Nas said there. The one thing I actually thought was that I hope they don't get out of jail in this test match. You know, when they bowled them out and they had a chance and they looked like they had a chance of winning it, actually part of me thought, you know what? You know, if they end up winning this test match, then that might just cover off a few. It might just make a few people go, oh, actually, look, it was only 3-1. But in actual fact, this has been an absolute drubbing all the way through. I can't think of any stage really for more than half an hour did we look like we were on top in a test series. 12 for 3 maybe, but then that quickly changed. So part of me was quite pleased in a way that they got rolled in the way they did, the manner they did, because finally, we might actually get to try and sort out our cricket, because this has been coming for a long time. Now, this hasn't been coming over because of what's happened in the last year, the last 5 years almost. This has been building up, and people have been talking about it for a long time. So now we've got to do something about it. So in a way, I'm pleased it happened, because maybe now we will.
Michael, you've been there throughout the entire series, and you've been at the end of Ashes series when they've ended badly, both as a player and as a journalist and a broadcaster. Just how bad was it out there in this series?
Well, the end was very bad. I think that image of Ollie Robinson getting bowled, of the final ball of the series, will stand as the defining image, really, because he was backing away so far, he was almost off the cut strip. So the way England folded at the end there was a bit sad to see. It was obviously a broken team and a team that had lost its stomach for the fight a bit at the end. So that was a sad thing to see. And well beaten. I mean, but for 2 sessions lost to rain in Sydney, a bit of bad light at the end of that game, it would have been 5-0, another whitewash. So it's been quite depressing viewing here from an England perspective. And obviously being surrounded by Australians all the way doesn't make it easy either.
Obviously, this podcast will be very England-centric, Nas, but we should give credit to Australia. Maybe they're not the great Australian side of, say, the Shane Warne, Ricky Ponting, etc., Steve Waugh era, but they've been excellent.
They have been excellent. Their bowling attack on those pitches, you'd have to play well to get runs. I said before the series that I thought batting in Australia, yeah, they had great attacks, but as Rob will tell you and Ath will tell you, it is a great place to bat. It really is. But on those pitches, against that attack, and I think Michael highlighted before a ball went down, look out for Cameron Green. He adds to this attack. And who was it yesterday at 60 for none? Came on and got those first 3 wickets, Cameron Green. So to have and to do it without Hazelwood, my word, Hazelwood on some of these pitches would have been hard work. But the lad that came in Bolland, that came in and replaced him, was just as hard. And it shows they actually have some depth to their cricket, that people come in and do well. Usman Khawaja comes in, does well. You know, Richardson comes in, does well straight away. So there's a bit of depth to their cricket. I still think their batting is vulnerable. I really do. I still think, you know, David Warner against the red ball, if you'd started maybe with Broad and got him out early, then there'd have been some doubts in that batting lineup, but they didn't. And Australia got off to a flyer. But the bowling attack with Cummins, who I think is one of the great fast bowlers, he will end up one of the all-time greats. And then you've got Stark, the lengths he bowls, the variation he gives you, and you've got all those seamers that back it up, and a wonderful finger spinner in Nathan Lyon. They caught well, even though they dropped a couple of catches in this test. They fielded well, and they were well led on and off the field. So fair play, give them credit. I still think their batting is vulnerable, and that's where England missed their opportunity. They could have, if they'd picked the right side at the right time, they could have put that batting lineup under pressure. They didn't.
Come back to that. You will obviously have been speaking to some of the Australian journalists and maybe some former players. What's their take on what's happened over the last few months?
I think they're thrilled with how Pat Cummins has stepped into the captaincy. Obviously, it's gone brilliantly for him. He missed one game through COVID in Adelaide, but other than that, has had an easy run of it really as captain. So all that uncertainty ahead of the series with Tim Payne stepping down and Pat Cummins stepping in, I think they're thrilled with how he's taken to it. I agree with Nasser. I think it's a top-class Australian bowling attack. And clearly, Scott Boland is a good story, full stop. When he got the Johnny Muller medal at Melbourne in front of his home crowd, that was a very kind of emotional moment for everybody here, I think. So, yeah, they're a top-class bowling side with some vulnerabilities in the batting that England were not good enough to exploit. But fundamentally, they're just a much better side than England. And I think most people accepted that, and most people thought that to be the case before the series began. I think what people have found hard to take is just how below par England have played. England have got better players than they've shown here. I don't know whether you can say they're a better side than they've shown here, but they're less than the sum of their parts at the moment. And obviously that means that the gulf in class has been a big one. You know, it was Leonard Hutton who said you have to play 25% better than Australia to beat them in their home conditions. And I'm afraid Australia were just much stronger than England.
As you mentioned, Australia were 12 for 3, but yet again they managed to find a way, the batters, to put a total on the board that would put England under some pressure. England have not managed to do that, but Australia have done that throughout the series. Why? Why have Australia managed to do that and England have not?
There's a lot of different reasons. I mean, mainly their batting is better than ours. It might not be a great batting lineup, but it's better than ours by a long way. I think their bowling is better than ours as well. This sort of rhetoric that the bowlers aren't at fault for anything, I disagree with that. I don't think any of our bowlers, as great as Broad, Anderson, all of those guys are and have been, I don't think they get in their side. I don't think any of our bowlers take out Boland, people like that, any of these people. So it's been harder for our batsmen against a better bowling attack. They've caught better, even though they've missed the odd chance. Their mentality is so much better. I mean, how long now? I mean, when you look back, and we said this, or I said this, when Chris Silverwood came in and, all the talk, what's your big plan? What are you going to do? Are we going to try and get big first innings runs? Oh, are you? Geez, you know what? No one thought of that. I don't think anyone before you has ever thought that the plan in cricket should be to get big first innings runs. It's all sorted. There's just been the mentality of our cricket has been poor. They've chopped and changed as well. It's like under Joe Root. He started off in Sri Lanka, whenever it was he started, with Trevor Bayliss playing shot a ball, looking to go about it. Then over the last year, we've gone to the most timid batting lineup we've ever had. We still don't know how these players are going to go and play. We chop and change the mentality, and it's always been a negative, poor one for the last year. And that's why we end up, when Australia get under pressure at 12 for 3, head goes out there, Labuschagne, they look to say, no, this is how I'm going to play, and they're back to go and do it. England don't have any of that, no clarity whatsoever.
Nasser, of all the decisions that have been made out there, what has baffled you the most?
They're all equally baffling, I have to be honest. You know, the toss at Brisbane, and that's, you know, good coming from me, but a green top, and you leave out Anderson and Broad. I understand one, maybe Anderson's carrying a niggle, but to leave both of them out on that pitch, and then to bat first, to play Leach on a green top and bowl in with the field up and gets battered out of the, not only out of the day and out of the game, but out of the series virtually. They can't bowl him again. And then to turn up to Adelaide, and just because it's the pink ball test that we allegedly win but never do, and that they always win, we go for Anderson and Broad on a flat one. We leave out Wood, which gives us extra pace. We leave out our spinner, and Nathan Lyon's turning it on day one. Ben Stokes has bowled in one championship game this year. 17 overs he bowled, and he is about to snap on the start of this trip. He was the lad that most needed looking after. And someone thought that the great idea was to have our enforcer as Ben Stokes. And no one, neither the captain, the coach, the 57 backroom staff, the strength and conditioning guy, no one thought to tap Joe Root on the shoulder and say, I don't think Ben Stokes at 130k with 17 first-class overs under his belt this summer is the right person to do this role. He may not last the series. He didn't last a day. He literally could not bat properly. He was that stiff in the first test match, and he couldn't end up bowling properly because he went in the back. No one had the thought to say, you've got a 140k bowler in Mark Wood who does this day in, day out, as we saw in Hobart, and he can do that role. So there were so many, the Lions game. I know there's COVID, but why just one Lions game? Why not more? And when you have that one Lions game, why not have these lads like Lawrence, like Bairstow, like Crawley, like all of them go off and play in that game? The Lions isn't about getting your third team ready for an Ashes tour in 15 years' time. The Lions is about making sure that next test match, if you've got someone who needs a knock or a bowl, they're available to bowl. But so I could go on here, I could rant on forever here. The mindset for 2 years about we got to prepare for the Ashes, we got to look for the Ashes, we got to rest people for the Ashes, we got to rotate for the Ashes. New Zealand and India are over, there'll be good preparation for the Ashes. And then suddenly you've done all this prep and you turn up and the pitches are completely different from what you thought they would be. There are 3 green tops in there. So your whole planning has gone out of the window. Just look down at every test match and try and win that test match. So there have been so many mistakes made. And that's why they've lost it 4-0.
I think the worst selection was Adelaide when the series was still live, and you left out Mark Wood and Jack Leach on the best pitch of the series, reacting to what had happened at the Gabba and having a premeditated thought of what was going to happen under lights at Adelaide. So this notion, and we heard it a lot at the start of the series from England's management, that the Ashes is a marathon and not a sprint. Well, actually, it was a sprint. It was a sprint for 2 games, because if you're in the series after 2 games, you've a chance. Obviously, if you're 2-0 down, no side in the history of cricket has come back, English cricket at least, has come back from 2-0 down here in Australia. So you kind of had to throw everything at the Gabba and Adelaide and be in the series at that point. So it was utterly baffling to me that Mark Wood was left out of that second test match at Adelaide. And obviously he's played the three games since, 2 of them being dead rubbers. And really that's why I'm not getting taken in by all the, if you want to call them, excuses that are being made about the county structure, about COVID, about restrictions that the players are under at the moment, because the list of mistakes there that Nasser rightly kind of laid out, they're all, you lay all those at the management's door, whether it's coach, captain, director of cricket. They're mistakes that have been made here. You can't hold a cohort of first-class cricketers in England responsible for that. So you have to tackle what's happened here. And obviously you might look at broader issues, but you can't escape those mistakes here.
Going to pick up on something Nasser said before we come on to selection and personnel. Keezy, Michael Vaughan said to me a long time ago, we have an unhealthy obsession with the Ashes. Is that what Nasser, do you think, is talking about in terms of forget about India and New Zealand, it's all about the Ashes? Do we need to play each test match on its merit and not look too far ahead? Or does there have to be a degree of planning and thought going down the line?
I think there does have to be a degree of planning, but it doesn't necessarily have to be about the Ashes. What it has to be about, your planning has to be about, is how do we become the best team in the world? That's what Andy Flower did with Andrew Strauss. It wasn't about how do we get everything ready for one test match series. And Duncan Fletcher was the same, really. When he saw Steve Harmison, he didn't think, oh, great, this is how we win the Ashes. What he thought was, here's a bloke that if the penny drops for him in test cricket, he can bowl 90-mile-an-hour rockets and could be a great bowler in test cricket. That's your forward planning. It's looking at your batsmen like he did with Trescothick and Vaughan and saying, do you know what? I don't think these guys are going to be good for the Ashes. They're actually going to be good players for the future. So we invest in those people. And then when you look down at a surface, you just look and you look down at a test series, you try and pick the best squad and the best team for each game in each series. And that's what takes care of itself, really. So there's a bit of both in everything, but it's not just about getting everything ready for the Ashes, especially. And what they would have learned, and I reckon they'll end up learning, a very, very hard lesson is that, you know, there was a thing about, you know, New Zealand. We didn't play our best team against New Zealand. Some of the players were at the IPL, all those types of things. And that's cost them because they've then gone into this series with absolutely no confidence. And that's been one of the big issues. So there's a bit of both with the planning, but it's not just about just getting ready for the Ashes in a year's time.
I'll just tell you a story about Andy Flower, who I thought was a brilliant coach, and the mindset he tried to instill in his team. I was doing the Player of the Year. I was hosting it. Usual earner for Nas was at 2013 at Lord's. And I went off into the reading room there at Lord's. And I was doing my prep, my notes, my questions for various people. And Brody came in and Andy Flower came in. And he just said to me, Nas, do you mind? I have to have a word with Brody here. And I thought, oh, interesting, he's kicking me out. And he tore an absolute piece off Stuart Broad. For one reason only, that year Andy Flower decided that leading up to the first ball of the Ashes, the team, the management were not going to talk about the Ashes. It was obviously important. It was obviously what he had geared up the team for, but they were focusing in on the New Zealand series first, and all the discussion and all the focus and everything had to be geared towards winning against New Zealand, winning that first test match at New Zealand, and the Ashes will look after itself in the future. And Broad had done an interview on BBC or something and had asked him and he spoke about it, and Flower tore a piece off him. I interviewed Pryor for that dinner for the Player of the Year. Pryor refused to answer, in front of everyone, refused to answer any question about the Ashes. That is the sort of mentality I want us to get back to. Not, oh, we're going to plan, we're going to do that, we're going to play here, Jimmy's going to play there, Broady's going to play there. Turn up, it's West Indies next, win that game. Of course, you have a coach, you have a director of cricket, you have, like Duncan Fletcher did with Harmison and Jones and Flintoff, you have someone thinking of the future. But your mindset as a team, as a squad, has to be about that game. It has to be about winning every single test match and let the future look after itself.
Well, you wrote in the mail, I was going to say you wrote in the mail, someone wrote it for you, but you would have dictated it to him, about tough love. What do you mean by that? Has it been too nicey-nicey at the minute?
Well, I mean, it was something that Keezy highlighted to me about a year ago, actually. Very rarely do I listen to Rob Key, but he was spot on. If you look at Ashley Giles, who is a blooming top bloke, I don't think any of us will dispute that. But you look at his appointments, they've actually been, throughout, just nice guys, good guys. Paul Collingwood, good guy, nice guy. Chris Silverwood, absolutely great guy, lovely guy. You'd love to meet up with him every day of the week. Graham Thorpe, all the way through. They're just good eggs, right? Chris Silverwood, the reason he did the rotation policy was because he's trying to look after his players, the mental well-being of his players. Ashley Giles did that interview with the BBC before this test match, and he was nearly in tears, Gilo, because he'd looked after his players and everyone was criticising him for doing that in COVID. So he was like, I'm trying to look after my players. But in the end, Gilo, Chris Silverwood, you're judged by results as well. So someone needs to be tough with them. When Broad comes out after that test matches and said, don't matter what bowling lineup you pick, if we're 140 all out, someone needs to be someone needs to be accountable. When Chris Silverwood, after those first two games, still says, I think we picked the right side, that is just nonsense. We need a bit of honest truth, some honest appraisal of where we are as a red ball cricketing side at the moment. And I don't think there's enough, there's everything the players want, they seem to get. Gilo, has Ashley Giles done anything against the players? He's taken off football from them, pre-match football. Was there anything he's gone to them and said, no, you're not doing that, whether it be IPL or anything else? So I think there needs to be some time just for a bit of toughness, a bit of this is not good enough.
So who is accountable then, Ath? Is it Ashley Giles? Is it Chris Silverwood? Is it Joe Root? Is it the team itself? If you change some of these personnel, does that fix the problem?
It doesn't fix the problem in terms of the more fundamental problems. If you want to talk about English first-class cricket, clearly not. And England's record in Australia has been poor for a long time. And you certainly, the current management can't be held responsible for that. But you have to be held accountable for a tour like this. Just listen to the last 10 minutes. It seems incredible to me because everybody's been talking about all the mistakes that are made. And yet there's a whole host of people out there who think there shouldn't be any changes after this tour. That, the captain should continue to be captain and the coach should continue to be coach and the director of cricket should continue to be director of cricket. You can't list all those issues and then just say, well, nobody's accountable. That was the whole point, really, of Ashley Giles loading selection onto Chris Silverwood's shoulders. He said when he did that, I want clear lines of responsibility and clear lines of accountability. So you've got that. And I'm afraid after a tour like this, you have to be held accountable. There's no escaping it.
And this is the point, isn't it? You said it at the start, Ath, are these players as bad as what they've been in this series? No, they're not. Ben Stokes is a very good cricketer. Joe Root is a very good cricketer. The bowlers, we've got some of our greatest bowlers we've ever had, all this type of stuff. And these players in county cricket is getting whacked at the moment. And a lot of it, I think, is probably quite fair. But the fact is, a lot of these players have been in this setup with this coaching team and this management structure for 2 years. They haven't played a lot of county cricket. They've been working with those coaches. They haven't been working with anyone else, these young batsmen. Ollie Pope, who comes out and does what he does, hasn't played a lot of county cricket because he's been in a bubble, and all you've got in the bubble is these coaches around you all the time trying to sort out your mentality, all the stuff. Chris Silverwood has to be accountable for it because that's what Ashley Giles has set up. But I'd be willing to bet that Chris Silverwood hasn't made a decision in the entire time he's been there. But that's more for him.
It's really the only thing the captain and coach can be held accountable for. You can't hold Joe Root or Chris Silverwood accountable for the structure of English first-class cricket. You hold them accountable for the team right in front of them. Are they making that team better? Are they galvanizing that team? Is that team better than the sum of its parts? And anybody who has watched this series, you cannot say that. And that's what you have to hold them accountable for. And that's it, really.
What about holding people accountable then, Nasser? Joe Root will be hurting. You've been in the situation where the Ashes have gone and you've had to do all the horrible interviews, etc., etc. He's come out and said he wants to stay, which was unlike perhaps when you came towards the end of your tenure as captain and Michael Vaughan had enough. To put words in Michael's mouth, but he probably had enough and it had run its course. He wants to carry on. Should he be allowed to?
Yeah, I'll just pick up on what Ath and Keezy was saying there. I'm trying to move away from the narrative of what's happened in the past that you all plan, because of what I just said about the Ashes and everything geared towards the Ashes. It happens every time. So before a ball went down in this series, I was hopeful that we would get away from that narrative. We lose 4-0, we lose 5-0, we lose 4-1. Nasser Hussain loses his job. Andy Flower loses his job. Duncan Fletcher loses his job. Chris Silverwood loses his job, because it just plays into the narrative that the Ashes is more important than every other sporting event there ever is. If you lose it, that means you have to go. But if you lose against New Zealand or India away, that doesn't matter, because we're building towards the Ashes. So I'm trying to get away from that. But Ath is right. When you make these mistakes that have been made, these clear cricketing mistakes, and still don't admit to making those mistakes, it shows that your brain is a little bit scrambled. Going back to your question, Joe Root, it hits you between the eyes, Joe. First of all, if it's your decision, it hit me between the eyes. I remember sitting on that sofa bed in Antigua when Michael Atherton came in, and no one was expecting it. We'd lost to the West Indies, and Ath just turned around to all of us and said, I'm done, I'm dusted, I'm resigning as captain. And it happened to Vaughan. It's obviously not happened to Joe Root. There's always someone else, Wardy. You see, what I'd find uncomfortable with is if Chris Silverwood loses his job, and I'm talking about me, if I was captain and Chris Silverwood lost his job and I didn't, I'd be blooming uncomfortable with that, because all those decisions that Chris Silverwood is getting nailed for were Joe Root's decisions as well. Correct. He's the captain of the England cricket team. I would feel really uncomfortable if Silverwood got axed and I didn't. I would have felt uncomfortable if Fletcher got axed and I didn't, because they were my decisions. So, but the problem then, you axe Silverwood, you axe Root, you probably Ath is right. Who was the man that made Silverwood the all-encompassing, powerful man in English cricket? Giles. You axe Giles, and you play into the narrative that we do every 4 years. But someone has to be accountable. Mistakes are made.
But that's fine. But do you think they should go? I mean, what would you do?
I think Silverwood should go. Yeah, and it hurts me to say that, Rob, to be honest, because I think he's a blooming good bloke. I didn't like, and I know Gary Kirsten was probably just answering questions that he was asked on a radio interview, but here it's
unedifying, that wasn't it?
Huh?
It was a bit unedifying.
Here is a bloke in Silvers that's looked after his team. He's looked after a team in COVID, in bubbles, played more test match cricket than everyone else. He's tried to look after his players and their mental well-being. And he sat in his hotel room with his family, all of them virtually, with COVID. And, you know, there are interviews going on for his place and his position. I didn't quite like that, to be honest. And I know Gary Kirsten was probably just answering a question on an interview, but for the reasons, not because we lost the Ashes 4-0, but for the reasons I've given, I think that the mistakes that have been made, I think Chris Silverwood will have to take, because of what Ashley Giles did to him and giving him that role and being the chief selector as well, I think he would have to go.
If there are to be changes, Ath, and let's say with the captain, what are the alternatives?
Well, clearly, when you're talking about a coach or a suit job, like the MD's job, there are more alternatives because you're not bound by the playing talent within your boundaries. So you can go international, and some of our best coaches have obviously come from abroad, Duncan Fletcher and Andy Flower. So in terms of the coach, you've got lots of alternatives. In terms of a suit job, you've got lots of alternatives. The issue is obviously the captain, because there are very few alternatives. Ben Stokes, obviously, has got that kind of aura, and one would imagine leadership quality or ability, which when he stood in this summer, you saw quite clearly, I think, in that second, third team that beat Pakistan, the white ball team after COVID infected the main team. Whether you could give it to somebody like Stuart Broad for a year in a caretaker role almost, I don't know. But I do believe that there is always someone else. I think it's the worst reason in the world, actually, to stay in the job when people say there's nobody else. And I heard that a little bit towards the end of my captaincy. We won a game at the Oval in 1997 in the Ashes, and I was going to jack it in before that game, and we won. And then, you know, I got persuaded to do another tour, and that was part of the conversation that, you know, we don't quite think there's anybody else to do it yet. But of course there always is. There was Stewie, and then there was Nass, and both of them, you know, did excellent jobs. So there's always somebody else. But they're not huge choices at the moment, it must be said.
How do you see it, Keezy, on the captaincy side of thing? I mean, would you allow, if Joe wants to carry on, allow him to carry on?
I've been sort of tossing and turning over this one. My view is that originally it was that Root could carry on, but not with the same setup around him, not with Silverwood, not with Giles, people like that, because I think that Root himself needs a hell of a lot of help in decision making when it comes to making the right decision. As I say, I think that he has probably made most of these decisions, and I see a situation where Chris Silverwood has just pretty much said, okay, Joe, I'll back you, whatever you want to do. So I think a lot of these decisions have probably been his, whether it's the toss, whether it's the team selections, how they use their spinner, how they captain spin, how they use Ben Stokes as the bowler. I think this has been going on for quite some time, actually. So I sort of thought, well, if you got in a Mahela Jai Wardner or Ricky Ponting, I know these guys are probably not available, but someone who's so cricket savvy that they can help Joe Root on that, then that would allow him to continue as captain. But like Nass says, I just don't think that's right. I think ultimately, I think Ben Stokes would actually do a very good job, if you ask me now, because of what he did in that one-day series. And I heard some of the way that he spoke, and I speak to some of the players, and this, what he, and you ask him, what gets said and stuff. And he sounded so impressive to me in the way that he spoke. All the things about mentality that I've sort of disagreed with from this England setup, I think Ben Stokes actually has, but he would need help. We don't need in this England setup a place where the coaches just facilitate whatever the players want. That is what's killed England to some degree. And that's not what we had. I mean, I didn't play much, but, ultimately you need someone there to steer you in the right path. So that's where, like they said, there's not loads of options, but Ben Stokes would be the man for me. And I'd also look right to the top. I think you've got to make a lot of changes.
Just before we move on from the coaching, I think they have to split the job as well.
Yeah,
I know I've said this for a long time. But, there's the T20 internationals happening within the next 5 days. The Ashes came on the back of the World T20. You cannot tell me that it is easy for one man to be across all this. The schedules are such at the moment that I think it's impossible for one man to do everything. You can't tell me in the middle of a World Cup in Dubai that when the head coach should be thinking about the Ashes, but obviously if one man's doing both, he's right in the middle of a World Cup. It's impossible. And Chris has done a chat with the media this morning, which will appear in the papers in a bit of an embargoed chat. But that is one area that I thought, when he was made coach, was a big mistake in not splitting the role and making it fundamental split between white ball and red ball.
Don't you think then as well, though, this is the problem? You then have to go back to selectors. So it's another decision that Ashley Giles has got wrong, because you can't see a time where you've got two coaches who then is in charge of picking each team. So there's so many of these things. And I feel, as we said in a podcast, in one of these podcasts a few test matches ago, I feel sorry for Chris Silverwood, because he's just been dealt a bad hand that he's not capable of dealing with. And Ashley Giles was quoted, wasn't he, as saying that having selectors is like archaic from 150 years ago. I'm sorry, I disagree with that. The way that they had it before had moved forward. They had all these scouts, all these metrics that were coming into a central body, and almost one of the more high-tech ways of selecting teams, almost to the point where you thought they were overthinking it. And now Ashley Giles is in a position where he's going to have to backtrack on nearly every decision he's made. And then, like Nasser says, if you're Ashley Giles and you've got to go up to Chris Silverwood and say, by the way, he's sort of damned if he does and damned if he doesn't, because he's got to go up to Chris Silverwood and say, I don't think you're the right man. And then that makes him look bad. Or he's got to say, I do think you're the right man. And everyone goes, well, you're wrong for making that decision in the first place. You've got to go. So I don't know what they do with that.
But there was criticism of the selection and people overthinking it, Ed Smith. So in fairness to Ashley Giles, Nass, he streamlined it. It's worked for New Zealand. That's the way they do it.
Yeah, he's a disciple of Duncan Fletcher, Duncan believed firmly, and he sent me a WhatsApp, Dunk, when the change happened, saying this is what I wanted years ago, was that he believed that the coach should fundamentally pick the side. That's fine if that coach, is smart enough, like Duncan was, to have a gut feel for players that were around, like Vaughan, like Flintoff, like Trescothick, like Jones, like Harmison, and was solely in charge with the captain. I feel actually within this team, as Rob Key just said, that Silverwood doesn't make most of the decisions. There's an inner core of players that actually make those decisions. The two things I'd say why I didn't like the change: one, I don't think that coach will. So now you're talking about who comes in as opening batter. So that coach, how much would Silverwood have seen of some of the lads on the radar? Yeah, you can see him on a stream or something, but how much would he have been out to see Yates at Edgbaston or whatever bat? And the other thing is, I do think you do get in that bubble so much that you need an external voice. You really do need someone to tap you on the shoulder when you're thinking of leaving Broad and Anderson out at Adelaide, or you're thinking of leaving Leach and Wood out, Broad and Anderson out of Brisbane, or you're leaving Leach and Wood out at Adelaide. You need someone to tap you on the shoulder and go, really? Are you doing this? So that external voice out of the bubble, I had it with Jeff Miller. He was very good at that. We were wrapped up in the bubble, and Dusty would often ring me up and say, Nas, I've got this lad for you. I think he can play. Or, you know that lad? I don't think he can play. So just that external voice and that thinking differently, that not Ed Smith, it could be anyone, but I do think they need to just get away from everyone in the bubble making all the decisions.
If you don't split the coaches, Ath, you are fishing also from a very small pond, because if you are Mahela Jayawardena, why would you want to take on, all right, it's a privileged position to be the England head coach, it's a well-paid position to be the England head coach, but why would you put yourself through 300 odd days away from home when the financial rewards for IPL, franchise cricket, whatever, are so great for such limited time away from home by comparison?
Completely. It's just another reason why you should split the role, because you broaden the talent pool. You might be able to persuade Mahela Jayawardena, say, to come and do England's white ball team, but you definitely wouldn't be able to persuade him to come and do it all for the reasons that you mentioned, the schedules being so brutal, young family, he wouldn't want to be away all that time. So if you do split it, you suddenly, perhaps you might get access to a number of people that you fancy. Definitely another good reason for splitting the job.
What are the names out there then, Keys? You say they did split the coaching. How do you see the candidates panning out for red ball and white ball?
Well, there's lots of names, aren't there? But most of them don't want to do it. Is England's biggest problem, I suppose, because like with players and everything, there's better jobs to have. If you got a job, if you're Stephen Fleming, I mean, I'm talking about people who are so cricket savvy. It doesn't mean they have to have played Test cricket and they have to have been legends of the game, but just people who have an understanding of the game that could actually help these players move forward, can help them make better decisions on selection, work out who the good cricketers are, all that type of stuff. There's people like Mahela Jayawardena, who I've said, I think he's got a very good cricket brain, was a bloody good captain, Mahela. These two will know much more about that than I would. There's people like the absolute top is people like Ricky Ponting, Stephen Fleming. And the sad thing about all of this, Wardy, is that none of those guys are English. And that's another problem with our system at the moment, is that when everyone starts throwing names about Gary Kirsten, I thought Gary Kirsten would be quite good, but I agree with Nas. I didn't enjoy the way that he spoke about Chris Silver, or spoke about the job when Chris Silver was still in it, which is a black mark against him, but that's not the be all and end all. Just pick the best man for the job. I would split it, and how I would do it, I would get one of those guys in if I could for Test cricket. Ricky Ponting would be the absolute A1 for me, because I just love the way that he talks about the game. I think he's got such a good cricket brain and people follow him. There's no doubt about that. Would he do it? Absolutely not. You'd probably have to give him £5 million. But I would then try and find someone for our white ball setup. I would look hard for an English coach. And as I say, the saddest thing about that is I can't give you a name for that, because English coaching so far, they've had 3 cracks at coaching the England team, and it's been a disaster every time. And 2 of those times were by the same person. So we have to look at that, because that's the thing that I really don't like, is the fact that names don't jump out of you, English names don't jump out of you.
To broaden things out and perhaps to help us get there, structure, etc. Nas, in fairness to Joe Root, has he been given the best chance to succeed in red ball cricket, or has the reset to white ball cricket had a major effect on the Test match team, his team?
Yeah, of course. The reset has had a major impact. And rightly, that reset, Andrew Strauss was absolutely spot on to do that reset. And it ended up in one of the great days of cricket we've ever witnessed. And it gave so much to England fans winning that World Cup. Don't minimise what Strauss and the reset originally actually did. But I agree with Rob, actually. This has been a long time in the offing this. This has not just happened in the last year or so. And also, I don't think, it's like when everyone's knocking the whole of English cricket, you know, as Ian Bishop tweeted a few weeks ago, let's have a little bit of perspective of where we are with our game, what we've got with our game, and really focus in on what we need to change and what are the areas we are struggling. Are we a good white ball side? Yes. Are we a great white ball side? Yes. Do we have a great captain? Yes. Do we know what we're doing with that? Yes. Keep an eye on it. Red ball cricket. Have we got great seamers? Yes. We've got 2 of the greatest that have ever played the game, Broad and Anderson. We have Wood. We hopefully have Archer. Wokes in certain conditions is brilliant. Robinson has a huge future. Do we have batters in red ball cricket with the exception of Root? No. I saw a list of stats since 2014 of England batters. It was horrendous. It was a horror show. And I know some of it's been on spicy England pitches and some away from home, but it was a horror show. Do we have a single spinner that we can trust at the moment? A Graham Swan or an Ashley Giles? Someone we can trust? No. So those 2 are the areas we have to focus in, and they are obviously linked. Because if the pitches you are playing on, the type of cricket you are playing in first-class cricket is all about seam friendly, your batters are getting no runs, your spinners are not bowling, and Joe Root and Chris Silverwood, when they come, because they've selected everyone, Wardy, we're talking about selection. They have been through the list of everyone in county cricket that deserved a call-up, and they have all flattered to deceive. So where do you go from that when you have selected everyone in county cricket? So that for me, focus in on that, the batting and the spin bowling in red ball cricket, easier said than done.
There's a lot of passion for Test match cricket, and a lot of supporters will be hurting after this defeat. We are passionate Test match aficionados, if you want to call it that way. We love the game. We're 4 middle-aged white men. Why is Test match cricket the most important format? Or is the future of the game, the youngsters coming through, those that watch and play it, more interested in white ball cricket, T20 cricket, IPL cricket, the 100, etc.?
Well, there's no question that the driver of the game in future is going to be shorter form cricket. There's no question about that. But I think it would be a very sad day if first-class cricket disappeared, or if Test match cricket disappeared, because it is a great format of the game. I think, I can't speak for the others, but the games that I remember are the great Test matches, you know, the close finishes, the fantastic wins in Test match cricket. The one-day games were very, very enjoyable to play in, but they don't live long in the memory, or they didn't live long in the memory for me as a player. So I still think Test cricket is a great form of the game. First-class cricket is fantastic. I don't say it's more important. We have 3 formats of the game. We have first-class cricket, 50-over cricket, and 20-over cricket. And clearly limited overs cricket will drive audiences as the game looks to spread into new territories. It's clearly T20 cricket that's going to be doing that. So I don't say it's more important, just that it's a great form of the game, and it's there, and it's well supported, especially in England. The anger felt over this series has been, I think, of a higher degree than if England got beat in a World Cup or in a one-day series. People Maybe it's an aging demographic, I don't know, but people do still love Test cricket in England. So it also drives television revenues. The broadcast deal that was done 3 or 4 years ago that was worth 1.1 billion to the ECB is based but a large part on Test match cricket. The crown jewels of 6 Test matches a year that probably are worth more than anything else to the ECB. So for all kinds of reasons, it's important. I don't say it's the most important thing, but while it's there, you damn well better try and be good at it.
This rhetoric as well, that you can't have one without the other, that we can't be good at both and all of this, it's just not, there is no way that we can't get this right, in my opinion. There's no way we can't still be a great white ball team and be a good Test match team. We've been a really good Test match team. We've got to number 1 in the world, albeit not for a very long time in the history of our Test match game. We can do this. It just requires people working together and actually just putting aside all the agendas that are there, because we lose the Ashes and everyone blames the 100, the big elephant in the room. And obviously we're going to be, and I'm going to support the 100 because, we show it on Sky, all of those things. But I agree with that. I don't think the 100 is to blame for what's happened in the Ashes. This has been going on now for a long time. I did an interview in 2008 saying just be careful about the pitches and the conditions of first class cricket, because it's going to come back to bite you. And that's exactly what's happened. We can fix this. There's no doubt about that. And it doesn't have to be for one to succeed, the other one has to fail. There's 2 camps in English cricket at the moment, and it's killing our game to some degree. And we need to just find a solution. And that's hopefully what we'll get up to here, that actually can help. And people think that I don't like county cricket, or when you have a go at pitches, or when you have a go at county cricket, it's because I don't like it. No, everything I am is because of county cricket, really. I owe it more than anything. I just want to see it played better, and I don't think it's that tough a job.
Take us in the dressing room, though, Keezy. I mean, you're pretty tight with the Kent dressing room and the England lads as well. I'm not going to speak for the other 3 of you, but when I was coming through the Surrey dressing room, it was always, I want to play Test match cricket. I watched Stewart and Thorpe and all these guys play with Nasser in the Ashes. That's what I wanted to be. In the modern dressing room, let's say Liam Livingstone, who's been kicked around in terms of playing Test matches in the West Indies, is that the focus of the county dressing room, what the players want to do? Are they looking at the television screens and going, do you know what? I want to play under Joe Root, or do they want to play under Owen Moore?
I think everyone starts out, and I still think there's a generation that starts out going, I want to play Test cricket. Test cricket is the pinnacle, like we all did. And they come in and they think, great, as a 20-year-old, you come into county cricket and you think about and you're dreaming about playing Test cricket for England, like we all did. And that was our option. And that was the way that, these guys are older than me, but that's what my generation thought about. But now you have this problem that they schnick off a few times, or it doesn't quite go well, or they stand there in 4-day cricket in the field and they go, hang up, you know what, I quite fancy this T20, I quite fancy this franchise cricket. The Ben Ducketts, the Laurie Evans, all these people now, they've got another avenue they can go down. So they give it a bit of a go, and then they very quickly flip and they go, no, this is the way I'm going to go. So they can give up on Test cricket if they want. And I'm not saying that Ben Duckett and those people I've mentioned have given up on Test cricket, but there is another option. There is another window. I spoke to some of the players while the Test series was going on and asked that very question you did. And the talk has changed. In our day, it was probably people talking about what Nasser's doing, what Ath's doing, playing in the Test matches when we're sitting in the Canterbury or the Kent dressing room. Now they start talking about the various competition, the various deals, the amount of money they can make. If you go and get in, one of these you go and play the Big Bash, that might be 50,000 Aussie dollars. Then we get the Bangladesh Premier League. There's another 30,000 or 50,000. Then we go and play the Pakistan Super League. And all of a sudden, so the focus and the need is not the same as when we were there. When we were playing, you wanted to make money in this game, you had to play for England in Test cricket. That is not the case anymore.
But having said all that, Rob, I also think there'll be a lot, and I can't speak for county cricketers here, but like you said at the beginning of this vodcast, where you were sat towards the end of the Test match with your Aussie shirt on and your baggy green cheering on Australia, I think there would have been a lot of county cricketers reasonably happy that it ended the way it did. simply because there'll be a lot of them, batters, spin bowlers, even bowlers. I saw Jamie Porter tweet about the seam on the ball. I think they will be thinking, thank goodness for this winter and the last year, because finally you lot can listen to what is going on out there and we can start doing something about it. Finally, we have to hit rock bottom. We have to go through what we've been through in the last year for you lot to actually what is happening in domestic county cricket. And I agree with Ath, that Ath said it, and he said it brilliantly in his piece today about blaming, everyone blaming county cricket. That's not why we lost the Ashes the way we did. But I think there'd be a few county cricketers saying, right, okay, now you listen, let's do something about it, because it's not good enough at the moment where we are.
There's all this pitch debate going on, isn't there? And I saw one of the articles where they said that after the 2015 World Cup, the groundsmen were all pulled in together. I think Andrew Strauss did it and got them all together and said, I want flat pitches for our white ball cricket. And he got every single one together, and that was the plan, and they did that. And they also said that not one thing has been done, not one thing has been said to them as groundsmen as a whole, and they've never been pulled in. Ashley Giles has not pulled any of them in, and he was complaining about the surfaces they play on and has tried to do anything really about it. And that's an issue.
Move on to the structure in just a minute. I'm going to slightly go off on a tangent though, Nas, in terms of the primacy of Test match cricket. Virat Kohli stepping down as Indian captain. I was watching that and I thought, and something inside me feared a little bit for Test match cricket, because Kohli has driven India's desire to compete in Test match cricket. Will the next person be so passionate about it? And if they're not, can you see that being a big problem for the world Test game?
I mean, it's obviously a concern, and it's a sort of red flag moment, because Kohli has had that passion, and he's not just talk the talk, he has walked the walk. He'd have done an IPL and then turned up and played straight away. So absolutely, it is a moment that you got to, again, another moment you have to look at. Absolutely, the Test match cricket, but I think whoever takes over, whether it be Rohit Sharma, I think there is a culture in India, and I did it in that cricket in Mumbai things, the Maidans and everything. They are being brought up and taught still, even though there were people in that program that said, everyone wants to know what the next IPL deal is. They turn up and say, what IPL franchise can I play for? The young kids and their coaches and their parents. I still think there is a culture of Test match cricket being incredibly important. And more important than that, Test match batting and red ball batting and the techniques involved have to be suitable for the red ball. And we saw that last summer. We didn't just see that the Test match cricket was important to India, but the way their openers batted in Rohit and Rahul, they gave us, who are brought up in these conditions, a masterclass in how to play in those conditions. Because right the way up from those Maidans of Mumbai, all the way through their first-class system, the pitches they play in first-class cricket, when they play their first-class cricket, when they get into the Test match side, they are brought up in a technique. I know they've just lost in South Africa, but in a technique that can play the moving ball. And I think that's where, which is an odd thing to say for us who are brought up against the moving ball, that sometimes we seem to have lost that sort of technique and mindset.
Right, Ath, we're not going to blame county cricket, but we are going to see if we can put forward some ideas that might help improve it. How would you structure our domestic game? Quite a broad one for you there.
Well, I think it's the most important thing that the game has to tackle. In terms of the global game, I think it's the most important thing that they have to tackle, because the fixtures are all over the place. There is so much cricket on and very little kind of structure or common sense to it. And that pertains to the English game as well. If you look at our season, the fixture list changes every year. If you're a poor supporter of cricket in England over the last 10 or 15 years, you must just be totally confused, because the competitions change, the time of year that these competitions change. One year, finals midsummer at Lord's, then it's end of season at Trent Bridge or whatever. You need to get a structure in place and have it for a considerable period of time so that people get used to it and can follow it, and it's predictable and has some common sense. and that also enables the best cricketers to come through, and obviously allows for a commercial consideration as well, because you need to run the game. So there has to be a commercial consideration behind the fixture list as well. So you're trying to bring all those things together, something that is friendly for the supporter, something that will sell commercially, and something above all that will produce good cricketers. And so you need to keep it fairly simple. My view is that you play a 50-over tournament at the start of the season. You're talking mid-April to mid-May, because your white kookaburra ball is going to do less anyway on pitches when they're a little bit damper at the beginning of the season, and you've got a block of 50-over cricket there. Then you're playing first-class cricket from mid-May to mid-July, the start of your first-class competition. Then you've got your short-form competition for a period of 3 or 4 weeks, and then you finish off with a couple of rounds of first-class cricket at the end. 3 formats, not 4, and a simple, smooth structure.
Just to come back on you on that, though, Ath, why do we need to play 50-over domestic cricket? Did England win the World Cup, 50-over World Cup, because Jason Roy, Johnny Bairstow, Ben Stokes played in the Royal London One Day Cup? No one watches it. It's not, people aren't knocking it around in the middle overs like it used to be in that format. No one watches it. No one goes to the ground to watch it. What they do watch is the Blast and the 100. They've been big crowds and good viewing figures. So why do you need to play 50-over domestic cricket? Shouldn't that be the format to go?
Well, my view from a long time back was that cricket should just have 2 formats, really, long format and short format, because I always felt that 3 formats would crowd the fixture list, which is what has happened. And that if once the fixture list is too crowded, there's only one thing that is going to get damaged, and that's the long form of the game. So historically, I always thought long form, short form would be simple. But whilst you have 3 forms of international cricket, 50-over, 20-over Test cricket, you've got the World Test Championship, the 50-over World Cup, the 20-over World Cup, it just probably makes sense to mirror what you see at international cricket in your domestic game. Just seems a common sense thing to do to me, because if you don't have any 50-over cricket at all, and you suddenly have a couple of bad World Cups, people will be saying, well, there's no surprise because you're not playing any 50-over cricket. So just mirror what is there in international cricket.
But isn't this the problem, Ath? This sort of gets to the crux of it, is that, everyone's talking about, we need a red ball reset. No one's really living in reality with what that means and how you do it. There is no way, everyone says, well, we just need to, have one short form competition in terms of 20 over or the 100. That's never going to get voted through. This is the problem. It's all well and good saying, but saying that, we just do this, this, and this, simple. But these things are never, ever going to get voted on by the county chairman, the CEOs, and the ECB. And that's the biggest problem. And that's why we end up with this ridiculously jam-packed schedule, because no one can agree, because they can't take away their self-interest. All the counties, and I mean the CEOs and the chairman, will all be sitting there listening to this going, yes, we need to sort out our cricket. We need to, we need to sort out red ball cricket and Test cricket. But by the way, it better not impact on my county. Everyone says, we need less 4-day cricket. We need to play less 4-day cricket and make it better quality on better pitches. And they all sit there and go, yeah, no, good idea, but that better not impact on us. I've seen it all before when they go, well, let's have less. We've been talking about less 4-day cricket for years and years. And the counties turn around and they go, well, hang up, we only get 50 days a year to try and make money. You're not taking 12 days of that away from us. What you're going to give us back. And this is the biggest problem that we have, is that the ECB really don't have a huge amount of power for all this. They can't just go, this is what you're doing now, everyone. We're sorting out red ball cricket, because we need 12 out of the 18 counties to vote for that. And they ain't going to vote for anything if it isn't on their agenda.
How do you see it, Nas?
Well, I've always seen it's got to be quality, not quantity. 25 years ago, Duncan Fletcher was invited to go and speak to all the first-class coaches, and he went, and the first thing he said, and he asked them, do you all believe you are playing too much cricket? And they all, to a man, said they felt they were playing too much cricket. It was just a treadmill. There was no time to rest and analyse your technique, your game, prep for the next one. You're just on the bus, go and play the next one, red ball, white ball, red ball, white ball. The ground, because of that, groundsmen can't prepare pitches, give enough time. There's too many players. There's just not enough quality. I think there is too much quantity. It's too confused. Not only are spectators confused, it's confusing cricketers. At 1 minute they got their red ball gear on, then their white ball gear, and then it's an absolute shambles. And then this summer you stop in the midsummer to play two, or the last one that's just gone, two white ball tournaments. I sat there in the rain delay at Lords. We didn't have many rain delays in the 100 Warder. You were there in that in the ice cream van that we sit in, and we sat there and it was raining, and you said, what do you think about this tournament? And I loved the tournament. It was a great tournament. My kids loved the tournament. The crowds loved the tournament. The 100 as a entity, if you just had the 100, it's an absolutely brilliant tournament, and it is needed, and the blast is needed, because we are talking as cricketers, but you do need to worry about the finances of the game. There is a balancing between the finances and the cricketing aspects. But I did say to you that day, be careful, and I gave you a long list of things, but I said be careful, because every time we are 20 for 5, everyone's going to blame the 100 for it. And that's exactly what is happening. Because you've got had two white ball tournaments in midsummer and no red ball cricket. And I don't want to highlight Athlad or whatever, Josh, but there are hundreds of Joshes out there that would have been looking forward to their summer, would have played and got into some form and into some nick, getting into June, and God, come on, this is it now. We've waited all summer for midsummer, and there's all those red ball cricketers that just suddenly go, you're in shutdown, and we'll see you in September when it's nipping around again. And the structure and the timing of domestic cricket needs a real overhaul. A blank piece of paper is needed, but Rob Key is spot on. They'll do it to a degree before the chairman and the chief executives go, well, hold on, that impacts us. And
that's the point. All we've done is point out the problems.
Yeah, we live in a utopian world that that's right. Should we worry about the finances a bit more? All our decisions have to be based on finances as well. But
we're sort of getting a lad who bats in a certain way, and we're pointing out that you're falling over, Ollie Pope. You're batting too far across your stumps, but we're not telling him the solution for it, and we're not telling him. We're giving people what the blueprint should be, but it's never going to happen in a million years. We're never getting rid of the blast and the 100. We're not going to get to that point. So we have to try and find a way of getting somewhere that actually works. I mean, are we agreed that we need less championship cricket to fit room in, so you can have at this point where you can have your blocks of 50 over at the start, championship cricket, blast cricket, 100, all of that? Can you explain that though, Rob, to your viewer or your listener? Why, when we are playing so bad at red ball cricket, why are we saying play less red ball cricket? Just explain that, please. I'll tell you why. Because the amount of cricket you play is pretty much irrelevant to how good a cricketer you become. And I'll give you an example. Dan Lawrence, right? He's just trying to make his way in Test cricket. He's 24 years of age. He's played 92 first-class games. Rohit Sharma, who is 34, has played 100 first-class games, including 40 Test matches. In all these other countries, they do not play anywhere near as much red ball cricket as us. Zach Crawley has played 70 first-class games. That is a career in Shield cricket in Australia, in India, places like this, in New Zealand. And this is why I say we can do this. In India, you're telling me they don't have a white ball focus, that their players that get into the system don't play loads and loads of white ball cricket and still be able to find a game for Test match cricket? Absolutely, they do. So it's not about the amount of games. We play more than enough red ball cricket. It's about the quality of it. And actually, we got to number one in the world. I remember, I'm one of the few who probably actually played through a time when the pitches were really good and the conditions were really good. And I also played at a time when the pitches just tailed off. And they're not. And everyone who disagrees with me, the groundsmen, You know, the CEOs, all these people are saying, no, you're wrong, Keith, have not spent one day batting on those surfaces. It's like going into a restaurant and saying, what's that food taste like, to someone who hasn't tasted it. You know, you just have, I have no stake in the game. It doesn't, but I'm just telling you what I feel the pitches and the conditions were like. And then the same for spinners and fast bowlers. So we can do all of this, but it is not about the quantity of red ball cricket we play. We play more than enough red ball cricket. We just don't play a good enough quality of it.
So, Ath, taking into account everything that's just been said over the last 10 minutes, what realistically, when Tom Harrison is calling for a red ball reset and restructure it, he can't go to the counties with a blank bit of paper. What realistically can the ECB do? Well,
they can play first-class cricket in better times of the year. If you restructure the season, suggested by putting 50 in a block at the start, and then you've got basically from mid-May to mid-July for basically the vast majority of your county championship season. You might have a couple of rounds after the short form competition at the end of August, but you've got a chunk of summer there that should be nice weather, should be able to prepare better pitches, and should have players focused on absolutely that format of the game. And whether that will happen, I have no idea. But that seems to me, when they're talking about a red ball reset, it's a focus on when championship cricket is played, because Nasser's point about opening the batting and spin, it's basically if you play on pitches in March and April and September and October. We've been doing the Bob Willis Trophy final in October in England. If you play first-class cricket at those times of the year, that is not your best preparation to produce a high-quality first-class competition. So I think it's about when championship cricket is played as much as anything. I completely agree. There's no need to play more of it, and probably less of it is a good thing once you're upping the quality and the standard of play and the standard of pitches. But it has to be played mid-May to mid-July, not in October and March.
Now, given you've got the 18 first-class counties, what about some real radical ideas? I mean, we've done, 3 divisions of 6, etc. What about, all right, forget that. What about just saying 9 counties are going to play white ball and red ball cricket, and the other 9 are just solely going to focus on white ball cricket? That limits the amount of cricket being played. Those that want to play red ball cricket or have a particular proclivity for red ball cricket and not white ball cricket might gravitate towards those counties. Do something different. Otherwise, we're going to have this conversation in 4 years' time, much as we probably had the same conversation 4 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, if you were starting with a blank piece of paper, you wouldn't do it the way it is done now, and you'd do it the way you're doing it. But unfortunately, we are starting at this point. I don't say unfortunately, actually, that's wrong, because we are all product of our county system. And the county system took us to number 1 in the world, by the way. And the county system has meant that Australia haven't won an Ashes series in England since 2001. So let's not applaud everything about Australian cricket. And the county system has meant that we were World Cup champions, and we're number 1 and number 2 in the 2 white ball formats as well. And the county system is blooming good. And when, as Ath said, when England are playing really well, they're great cricketers. And when England playing badly, it is all the fault of county cricket. So I have quite a lot of loyalty, actually, to county cricket and my county. I wouldn't have played for England, captained England, if it wasn't for turning up as an 8-year-old to play for Essex under 11. So I am not going to sit here and say get rid of some of the counties. I do think there are too many counties, and I do think you have to hold them accountable. I do think you have to turn up, go to some of them and say, right, what are you producing? What are you focusing at all on red ball cricket? Because of the system, because of the amount of cricket, I reckon half the counties, they're not focusing on red ball cricket. They're white ball. We want a good blast run. We may want a good 50 over run. The championship cricket will do it, but are we producing test match cricketers? I still think you look at each county and ask them, and some of them you may not think they are, but sides like Leicester or whatever, they produce them, and other sides not nick them or whatever. So keep an eye on that. So I am a fan of county cricket, and if you were starting from a clean slate, You wouldn't do it this way, but while we've got it this way, let's try and improve. Let's try and really look at it and ask players as well, Wardy. Ask players. Go and ask county cricketers, some of the experienced ones out there. Go and ask them, what do you need? What do you need? Because they can't all be wrong. I'll give you a list. The director of cricket has spoken about pitches. Tom Harrison has spoken about a red ball recess. Sir Alistair Cook has spoken about pitches. Joe Root twice now has spoken about pitches. Jimmy Anderson has spoken about how the pitches at the end of his career are not as good as when he started. So there's a long list of people that are saying these things. They can't all be wrong. So there must be something that can be done.
Come on, Keys, you like thinking outside the box. Give us a radical thing that you could throw into the mix.
I don't know about radical. I mean, I agree. Look, what KP said, he's right. If you want a better standard of county cricket, have 8 teams, all that type of stuff, never in a million years is it going to happen. You've got to get these people to vote. There's no point coming up with all these ideas that's never going to get voted through, because that's our system. It has to be. The counties have to agree to it. So we can't. The ECB just can't, unless they completely disband of all of them and start again, which isn't going to happen. So, what I would do, I agree with that. You play 50 over cricket at the start. And then what I would do, and this is where you're going to have to stick with me a little, I'd go to 10 games in the championship, 11 max. How do you do that? Because they're not going to agree to it if you just say, you're going to play less cricket. I would actually try and come up with 3 different divisions, but then they're not going to agree to the team. They're not going to agree if you've got 1, 2, and 3. So I'd take the best 12 teams in the country from this year. I'd put them in 2 divisions, A and B. So that's top flight cricket. They play 10 games. And the winners of those, they play to decide who wins the championship. So you've still got that quality. The bottom division is where you then, if you're in the top 2 of that, you then replace one of the 2 who are at the bottom of that 12, as it were, those 2 6 teams. That way, you're basically saying to 12 counties, which is what you need for a vote, for them to agree less cricket, you're saying to them, go on, you're still in top flight cricket. And then hopefully you're saying to the bottom division, you've got more of a chance. In theory, it's easier for you to get into top flight cricket because you don't have to be 2 out of 9 teams or 2 out of 10 teams, whatever it is in the bottom division now. So maybe that's something they look at and go, do you know what? Yeah, we don't mind that. Our county's still seen as one of the prestigious ones. We're still in top flight cricket. And if you're not, if you're one of the teams that have struggled over the years, you think, do you know what? We've got more of a chance to get into top flight red ball cricket. Then you have your blast, which would be on a Friday night running right throughout the summer, because I don't see how you fit it in any other way. Then you have the 100, which is needed. But during that 100, you then come up with, you have your north, east, south, west, and they play 5-day cricket. So all the best of the rest, any England players that you need to play, they play 4 or 5-day cricket throughout that period. And then you finish off the championship with the final in. So you have your 10 games, 11 max of red ball cricket. You've got your 50 over cricket. You've got your 100, which 100 was a success. And it's going to get bigger. People talking about the amount of broadcast revenue that went for the 100, only 15%. Well, it might be more next time. The next TV deal, that 100 might be worth more. And you know what? If the 100 makes money, that money should go back into county cricket to fund all youth cricket, all age group cricket in this country. County age group cricket should be free. We talk about diversity and all this type of stuff and making the game for everyone. Well, how about we don't price half the market out, half the people out of the market? Every time it's so expensive in some of these counties, youth cricket. How about the success of the 100 and the money and the extra money that everyone think, or the people who support it think it's going to make, that funds youth cricket in every county? That's what I would do.
Well, plenty to discuss, as we have done. Michael, I'm going to come to you for the final thoughts. You've been out there throughout this Ashes trip. Give the England supporters something to cling on to as they head towards the West Indies for their next Test match assignment. Who's advanced their cause? And we haven't mentioned Mark Wood's 6 at Hobart. Finally, just reward for some absolutely gut-wrenching effort throughout the series.
Yeah, not many England cricketers have enhanced their reputation here, but he's certainly one. As you say, he's run in, he's bowled really quickly. He must be through the air one of the fastest bowlers we've ever produced. But I think more than that, people have warmed to his kind of unquenchable spirit, really, the way that he plays. He reminds me a little bit of Goffey in my day, you know, one of those cricketers who just lifts everybody around him because of his spirit and manner, and the fact that he just obviously gives 100% very visibly every time he plays. So it was great to see him get some due reward at last. Obviously, he's going to form a part of England's Test match touring team to the Caribbean, which is a month away. There may well be some different names, but you know, to draw onto something optimistic, English cricket has come through a lot over many, many years, and it's usually found a way of righting itself and becoming competitive again. And I don't doubt that will be the case.
Perhaps we should finish with Keys. Are you just running through that structure again, just in case we missed any of the aspects of it? Perhaps not. We've gone on too long. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much to all of you who have watched and listened. We'll see you next time.